Coach Prime and Colorado absolutely nailed the spring game. I'll tell you how and more on today's episode of Locked On Buffs.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? This is Locked On Buffs. I'm your host, Kevin Borba, and joining me today is Mark Johnson, the voice of Colorado football, the voice of Colorado sports. Mark, how you doing?
Fantastic. It was a big weekend in Boulder, and unlike anything I've ever seen, Kevin, I can tell you that.
It was a massive weekend. My first weekend in Boulder, actually. Had a great time. We're going to be talking about how well the spring game went, what it means for the program, and then we're going to talk about some departures later in the episode because Colorado's been hit by the transfer portal bug going out, which is part of their plan, but we'll get to that a little later. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel, the official sports book. FanDuel's the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. Okay, Mark. Obviously, the spring game we knew was going to be sold out. We knew ESPN was going to be there. But what was your biggest takeaway from the outing, that people were still there in the snow? I walked to the stadium at around 8:39, and people were tailgating around that time. What was your biggest takeaway?
Well, that's a good question because, anytime you talk about a spring game, I think about football right away. Think about what are we going to see on the field? And maybe the biggest impact made was the electricity and atmosphere at Folsom Field. Now we knew it was sold out, as you mentioned, but when I got up, there was snow on the ground. Heck, I had over a foot up at my place down at Boulder. I don't know, 5, 6, 7 inches, whatever it was. And it was going to be cold. Instead of having a nice, sunny 55-degree day, it was snowy and, 31, 32 degrees, whatever it was for the game. And so I thought, well, those 45,000 fans aren't going to show up. And that's true. They didn't. Instead, 47,277 showed up, and it was electric, and nobody left early, and they stayed to take in the entire spectacle that was the CU spring game. So it was an awful lot of fun. That's the kind of excitement and generation that Coach Prime has generated here, and now that we're through the spring game, that's only going to continue over the next few months through the months of May, June, July, till we get to fall camp in August. And so that was probably the biggest takeaway, that everything that had been promised was delivered and then some from an attention, energy, atmosphere standpoint. And I just can't wait to get on the field and finally see this team play real games, whatever this team, Kevin, looks like by the time we get to August and September, obviously.
Right. There's a lot of moving parts and people changing, people in and out. I think my biggest takeaway was the fact that Coach Prime delivered. Not that I was questioning if he would or not, but I feel like he knows how to market Colorado. He knows how to market himself. I think he absolutely nailed the spring game in terms of having 98-year-old superfan Peggy do the opening kickoff. That might have been the loudest the stadium got, to be honest, because it was just such an exciting moment. It was also probably the best display of kicking we saw that day because the next kick after that was blocked and returned. And so that was awesome. I think in terms of which we didn't really get to see this if you're in the press box, but I was watching videos on my phone. He was doing on-field interviews and like narrating what was happening and what he was looking for. He was mic'd up for ESPN, and so I think Coach Prime knows exactly what he's doing. When he has the attention, he knows how to take advantage, and he knows how to maximize all of the attention he's getting. And so I think he did that to perfection. And then like you said, the fans showing up. Being from California and not living where it snows, I was a little interested to see how much the snow would deter people from coming, because it was cold. The night before, I was walking around Boulder the whole day prior. It was perfect weather, 45, no wind, which I learned in Boulder. As long as there's no wind, you're fine. But that night, I would go outside and there's snow on the ground. It's windy, it's chilly. And I was like, oof. I was like, I don't know if people are still going to show up. And everybody showed up. The student section was there right at kickoff. They were a little tardy to the party, but everybody was there. And anything else, Mark, before we move on?
Well, depending on what age group you're in, and Kevin, you're younger, but there was a guy named Bill Veeck that owned the Chicago White Sox back in the 70s. And that guy knew how to market. He knew how to present. He knew how to put on a show, draw attention, draw energy. And I was thinking of that, during the game on Saturday, that Deion Sanders is a master at marketing, at promotion and generating buzz and doing all these kind of things. Somebody asked him, and I know you were sitting there at his post-game press conference, whose idea was it to have Peggy Compton do the opening kickoff? And matter of fact, he says, it was mine. I mean, that's what this guy does. On top of the fact he's a heck of a football coach as well, and as we're learning, is a phenomenal recruiter. So that's, I think, why Buff Nation is so excited right there. But yeah, I guess we shouldn't be surprised. Maybe there's going to come a point here, Kevin, where we should just stop saying I'm surprised by what I'm seeing, because everything that's happened under Coach Prime has surprised me, and yet it's stuff he's talked about. So I guess I just got to get to the point where this is the new normal.
Yeah, I think the part where I say I'm surprised is just it's like the way he executes things, because it appears he told Peggy she was doing the kickoff at the meeting they had a month or so ago at her house.
Yeah.
And that video, like, that was not part of the video that was released. And so he's thinking months in advance and weeks in advance for all this stuff. And so it just shows he's a visionary in multiple ways, and we'll continue to see what he brings to the table. Before we move on, baseball is back, which means there's grand slams, no hitters, and double plays. They're back. And there's no better place to get in on the MLB action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. That's because right now, new customers can step up to the plate with the no sweat first bet up to $1,000. Just go to FanDuel.com/locked-on, sign up, place your first bet, and get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if you don't win. Aaron Judge hitting a home run is always a good bet. Shohei Ohtani going over on his strikeouts, whatever it may be. So don't miss your chance to get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/locked-on to sign up. FanDuel, the official partner of Major League Baseball. Okay, let's dive right back into the spring game. We talked about how it surprised us, but let's talk about how important the success was to Colorado, to Coach Prime. At the post-game press conference, he mentioned that there was 70 recruits/transfers in attendance. Obviously, it was on ESPN, and it was trending pretty much that entire day on social media. How important do you think this success was for Colorado in the present and for the future?
Well, depending on what you mean by success, there were aspects of what we saw on the football field were very exciting. I thought Deion Sanders looked very good. Obviously, Travis Hunter, you throw that cat out there, he looks good no matter what. We saw a few other guys. Dylan Edwards had moments, for example. There was a couple of guys on defense I thought flashed at different times. That's part of the success. What we kind of talked about in our first few comments, and then going into the generating the buzz around the country and the transfer portal and recruiting and all that, that really is where the great success of this thing will, I think, set the table for the success on the field moving forward. So success in terms of the impression that was taken away by those 60, 70 recruits, however many there were on Saturday, that's an enormous part of this. Now, that's separate, in my view, from what we saw on the football field. And obviously there's some work to be done, and this is no secret here. I mean, Coach Prime has talked about this in a couple of press conferences the last couple of weeks. They've got some work to do on the offensive and defensive fronts, I think. Overall, I'm not sure the defense showed itself all that well on Saturday. And so there's work to be done on that side. Now, I don't get too harsh or too concerned about that, Kevin, because once again, the roster is going to look so much different by the time we get to August and fall camp takes place. So, observations, yes. Areas of interest moving forward, sure. Areas of concern or worry, absolutely not, because this whole thing's going to change. But, I think there's two areas you kind of gauge success for what Prime did on Saturday for the Buffaloes at Folsom Field.
Yeah, I totally agree. I would say there's also multiple avenues of success. Recruiting, transfer portal wise, I'm pretty sure those kids had a great experience. Rick Ross, who is a rapper that kids love, he was on campus the day before. Their photo shoots are second to none. It was kind of interesting. All of their visit photo shoots were, I don't know if you were up, Mark, they were posting them at like 11 o'clock midnight on Friday night. I was like, are we all visiting right now? Like, what's going on? And then they got to meet all of the Colorado legends, which Coach Prime said in the press conference. He's trying to introduce them to Colorado because they kind of not left the program, but they weren't as associated with the program as he would have liked. And so they got to meet them. I think seeing the support from NFL guys at Colorado also helps. On the field success, obviously, like you mentioned, the offense looked good. We'll get to the shocking part in a little bit, but the best player, Montana Leminous-Craig, or at least I thought he had the best day. He shined. I think it kind of showed what the Sean Lewis offense could be, which is exciting for recruits that were in attendance, even without Jimmy Horn, who was not suited up. Seydou Traore, Jimmy Horn was suited up, didn't play. Seydou Traore didn't play. So they were working with their top guys, even with the guys that are coming with the transfer portal. They weren't there either. So it was, I don't want to say slim pickings, but Travis Hunter and Montana were kind of the only guys that Shedeur was obviously comfortable throwing the ball to. I think of Shadeur's 16 completions, about, if I had to guess, I would say 11 of them went to those two, because he was force feeding the heck out of them. And I mean, they were making plays, so why not? Defensively, and this is going to be a weird take, but defensively, I think the fact that they didn't look terrible, which is the bar I'm holding them at, considering they only had like 5 defensive linemen and not all the linebackers were there. I think that's a win, because you kind of showed what the defense is going to look like. They had some big hits. They had some bright moments against the second team offense. I think they just need more depth, and we saw that. I think Shedeur and the first team offense had no issues with that second team defense, which is why they're working on it in the portal. But yeah, I think that's another avenue of success, that nothing went horribly bad, because I think in a televised game like this, something could go horribly bad, like the defense getting blown up for 70 points or something crazy like that. And so I think the fact that they were able to limit how much everybody scored was a good thing as well.
Well, and the thing about it is, Kevin, and you know this, you don't put too much stock in this. All of the, pre-game interviews that I was doing leading up last week to this, everyone asked, what are you looking for? People expected to say something, well, I want to see a championship football team on the field. That's not what I was looking for. What I was looking for is, show me the installation has gone well up to this point. Show me that there's a culture change. Show me that guys are understanding the concepts of what they're supposed to do. And let me see progress in that regard. I'm not going to get too terribly worried if I walk into the house that I'm building, right? And the faucets in the bathroom aren't in there yet, but I still got studs over here. I'm not worried about that. I want to walk in and go, okay, the rooms are where they're supposed to be, right? It's as big as it's supposed to be, and love the space right now. And then we'll fine tune and we'll add all the baseboards and everything else that goes along with that. So I wasn't terribly worried about seeing a finished product on Saturday. I wanted to see movement in the right direction, and I think we definitely saw that.
Yeah, if the house is standing when you walk in it, that's all you need when you're building a new house. Also, do you think the fans kind of needed this experience for a Colorado event, even though it doesn't matter for anything really? But I feel like that kind of helps the success of the program, as well as having the fans bought in.
Well, I don't know if they needed that game, because they're eating up everything that Coach Prime is doing right now. I mean, everything that he touches right now turns to gold. It's unbelievable. I was at an event that I emceed on, I guess it would have been Friday night, and I mean, those people were going out of their minds. Coach Prime walks in. Everything he does right now is on a scale of 1 to 10 is a 10 for Buff Nation. And so what I think it did, it just added to what they're already anticipating and all the excitement that they're living on right now. And now that spring ball is over, we're going to watch what happens in transfer portal, which I know we're going to talk about here shortly. And so they'll get excited about that, all the different names that may be coming in here to Colorado. And then that's going to be the buzz they're going to live off of here in May, June, and July before we get to, fall camp in August. And so this high, this buzz, whatever you want to call it, is going to continue now for the next 3-4 months until we got real football on the field once again.
Yeah, and honestly, this is just a close on this. I was surprised how all of the little stores or pop-up stands, it's all Coach Prime gear. I stayed at a hotel that was like a half a mile away from the stadium, so I did a lot of walking around the Boulder area. Every restaurant I went to had at least one Coach Prime or Colorado memorabilia piece displayed in their entry. I think of the 5 restaurants I ate at, I think 4 of them had a Coach Prime menu item or a Coach Prime inspired menu item. So his presence is felt there, and you could tell the fans love every second of it. Let's talk about the surprising part that you alluded to. They have people entering the transfer portal that we weren't expecting. Jordan Tyson has decided to enter the portal, which happened right before we recorded. Montana Leminous-Craig, who was the star of the event, I would say kind of shocked the world, college football world, into the portal. Before we move on, though, I do want to thank you guys for making Locked On Buffs your first listen. Go check out Locked On's NFL mock draft special. It's here and it's bigger than ever. Follow all 32 teams' first pick in a 6-episode ultimate mock draft experience only on Locked On. All episodes are available on Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. But let's talk about the transfers. Montana, 3 catches, 154 yards, 2 touchdowns. One of his catches was a great jump ball catch where he kind of jumped with the defender, came down with it. The other one was a 98-yard catch down the sideline that showed off Shadur's cannon. Were you shocked by the news that he was entering the portal?
Very much so. In fact, on Saturday, I talked very briefly with Montana and was really stunned because he did look so good. Now, I understand. You've got Travis Hunter, who's going to be a wide receiver, obviously, along with being a defensive back. You got Jimmy Horn Jr., who was dinged up and didn't play the other day. Those are potential star players. Travis is already a star. Montana is a NFL quality receiver. Jordan Tyson, you broke that to me when we connected here. I didn't realize that he had jumped in, as you mentioned, that happened minutes before we connected. And so I didn't know about that. Now, he's been injured and he's got to come back from a serious injury. And so there is that aspect of it. But, Kevin, that's the thing. I did a show in Seattle this morning. We got talking about the transfer portal. And I said, I guess I have to stop being surprised by that as well. I mean, at the end of the college basketball season, you had players on Sweet 16 teams that are starting, playing major minutes, putting up big numbers, having NIL deals, and the season comes to an end, they jump in the portal. I mean, it's an amazing thing. The grass is greener on the other side of the fence aspect of this is fascinating to me because guys are leaving very good to great positions and situations to jump out there. And I think a lot of times for some of these young men and young women in college athletics, their NIL agents or whatever you want to call them are saying, hey, go out and test the free agent waters. Well, I'm not sure that's always a wise idea, but that's where we're at right now. Now, with what's going on with the NIL, it's great for Colorado right now, what Coach Prime is doing. Buff Nation loves it. It's good for me. I get to call all these new players coming in and great success at the University of Colorado. So I love it right now because it's good for Colorado and the Buffaloes. I just don't know if overall long-term it's good for college athletics. And it's startling to me when you see a guy like Montana Leminous-Craig, who was a bona fide star here at Colorado, is a fan favorite. Can't walk across campus without, being high-fived. He's got NIL deals and all those kind of things. And yet he jumps into the portal as well. It's head scratching to me, and I'm just glad I'm not an 18-year-old athlete that's in the middle of that stuff because I'm confused by all of it. So I'll sit back and report on it, I guess.
Yeah, and I think the thing to touch on too, I'm gonna go through all the guys that entered the portal because I think they've lost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7 guys today, or they've officially entered their names in the portal.
Yeah.
The wide receiver room, I think that's been the room I've been the most confident in on the whole roster from top to bottom. I think they've had the most depth. And so it doesn't shock me that there's some departures because when you look at Sean Lewis's offense at Kent State, there's about 3 to 4 guys every year that they're the guys that get the ball. They're the guys that are targeted heavily. And so, like you said, Travis Hunter and Jimmy Horn kind of are probably solidified 2 spots. I think one thing I took away from the spring game too that I forgot to mention was Travis Hunter was playing every offensive down possible. And so if that carries over to the season, he'll be one of the 2 main receivers. Jimmy Horn has kind of solidified himself as the guy outside of Travis Hunter. And then that leaves kind of 2 spots left for about, I would say they have 7 guys that could contend for a starting spot. And so you have guys like Xavier Weaver, who at USF was more productive than Jimmy Horn. You have guys like the latest Jackson State wide receiver, Willie Gaines, who he has a connection with Shadur already. There's more coming. I'm sure I miss glancing over someone, but there's just so many guys in that room. So I want to say I'm shocked, but I think that it was the fact that it was Montana shocked me because if I had to give a bold prediction after Saturday's game, which is kind of weird to do after a spring game, I would have said he solidified his starting spot, at least going into fall camp. And so he obviously felt that maybe the opportunity wasn't going to be there, or maybe the opportunity would be better elsewhere. You never know with NIL these days if maybe there was some back channeling from other schools that saw him and were like, we could give you a bigger role. That shocked me. Jordan Tyson, in terms of how good of a player he is, he's one of their better receivers from last year. Him and Montana were the 2 best. But he hasn't played at all this spring, and I think maybe that was hurting him. And maybe I don't want to say he was nudged on the way out, but maybe they were just encouraged to. I mean, Coach Prime did say he was bringing his own bags, and he's continuing to do so. And the more guys that enter the portal, the more guys that he could bring in from the transfer portal, which is kind of a weird business numbers things, but that's how it works. I'm going to update you guys with who has entered the portal within the last day or so. Chase Sowell, the wide receiver, Shaquan Bowser, the linebacker, Montana, obviously, we talked about, Jackson Anderson, offensive lineman, Tyron Taylor is safety, Jason Oliver, corner, Jordan Tyson, and then the latest, who just happened actually, is Oki Salave. I believe I'm saying that incorrectly, but
yeah.
there we go.
Yeah.
That's the latest entry, and so
Okay. Now he's now your listeners may or may not know this. He's a legacy guy. His father was a great player for the Buffaloes during their championship run. And so to see him jump in there, and he made a couple of plays. He flashed on Saturday a couple of times. We haven't seen him because he was injured last year. He came here as an athlete, and they weren't sure where they're going to put him. I think they looked at probably heavily at safety, and so that's another interesting one right there. And just because we in Buff Nation, you love your guys, right? And you want to be successful, but having Oki come in here and being a legacy guy and having a father who's a legendary figure here. And then losing him, so that ends up hurting as well. And Kevin, to go back, you talked about the depth in that wide receiver room, and I don't disagree with anything you said. The thing that's interesting, though, is both Montana Leminous-Craig and Jordan Tyson are NFL-level receivers. Both of those guys are going to get a long, hard look in the National Football League. And so, even with that being said, I don't know about you. I'll take as many of those guys on every position that I can get. And so it's always disappointing when you lose that level of talent, from any position group at the University of Colorado.
Yeah, I think the surprising part is that they both went. I thought if anything, just speculating out ahead, I thought they would lose one, just because, like I said, there's only so many mouths that are going to get fed with this offense and how fast they go. Because I don't know if you noticed this as well, Mark. When the offense was fully going against the defense, there was no substituting unless someone was injured. And I think Travis was the only one that got banged up after that first play, and he still stayed on. So nobody comes on or off. Once you're on, you're staying on for, it seemed like, the whole drive, unless they have different plans. I also wanted to tell you guys who Colorado is pursuing, likely to replace these guys. Marcus Peterson, he's a 6'4" receiver from Cincinnati. Didn't play last year, but he has 4 years of eligibility. Big guy from Florida. Coach Prime likes those Florida kids. He's made it known. And then Cadillac Brown from Nebraska, another receiver who they they probably recruited when he was coming out of high school. So yeah, they're already working hard to replace these guys. I was just shocked at those two entering the portal. The number itself, I think it's probably going to surpass 25, because right now, I believe I saw they have 82 scholarship players on the roster, counting the recruits and everybody that's coming in. And so they need that number to grow if they're going to bring more defensive line help, which they need badly. That defensive line obviously only had like 5 people available. It looked as well as it could for a unit that had 5 people available. Is there anything else that you would say to expect from the transfer portal, since you're so ingrained in everything that's going on over there?
Well, just outside of it, just to kind of emphasize what you were talking about there, they're still heavy right now in terms of numbers. And if they plan on going out and bringing more guys, that means you can expect more guys that are going to have to vacate and go someplace else. And so, yeah, this is going to be awful busy, and it's going to be very active. I mean, you pointed out, Kevin, that just while you and I are talking, right before we come on, a big name jumps in. You've had others now jumped in here in the last few minutes while we've been conversing. And so this is going to continue because you've got to work the math out, right? What they're doing, they're playing Tetris right now, right? I mean, they're trying to fit everything together and make sure they've got enough room for all the blocks are falling on top of them. And so that's the way this is going to be now during this period of the transfer portal, which ends here in 6-7 days, whatever it is. Yeah. So this is going to be a very busy time over the next week for Colorado, and as they sort that roster out and try to put it together with the right numbers.
Yeah, and that's a good point. The portal closes within the next week or so, so they have a lot of decisions to make quickly. Some guys may be encouraged to go seek opportunities elsewhere, but I want to thank you, Mark, for joining us. I want to thank you guys for tuning in to Locked On Buffs. Mark will, of course, be joining us during the season as much as possible. Look forward to having you on. Thanks for coming on, Mark.
You bet, Kevin. I always enjoy it.
Have a great time, guys. See you tomorrow.